Listen, little donkey. Take a look at me. What am I?
Really tall?
Wrong!
Today I wanted to jump right into the important questions. Questions that demand answers. Questions that plague my mind every day. Just how tall is Shrek exactly? Sure, at first glance one might just think that Shrek is really tall and leave it at that. But there's more to it beneath the surface. There are many layers to this, if you will. Today I'm going to be making the argument that will shatter the world of Shrek. I'm laying down the argument that our beloved Shrek is in fact not an ogre. Or rather, not in the traditional sense that most people think. Let's look at the evidence. First, we have the instances of Shrek's height compared to other characters. In many shots, Shrek appears to be an imposing figure, but contrast these instances with Fiona. Shrek is much wider than her, sure, but take a closer look. He's not actually that much taller than her. If we look later into the film franchise and make a few assumptions about some characters, we can get a pretty good look at these characters' different profiles. Starting with Prince Charming. He's famous and charismatic and the people of far, far away love him. Viewers are left with the impression from his appearance that he's daring. But his appearance plays into the parody that Prince Charming is. Prince Charming looks like a heroic prince, but he's actually a mama's boy. So we can take from this observation of Prince Charming that he's probably over 6 feet tall. Most traditionally heroic characters are depicted in this manner, but the key detail to take away from this is the word, parody. And looking at Princess Fiona compared to him, we can see that she is not much shorter than him, putting her at a fairly tall 5'10". Now we can compare Princess Fiona to Shrek and see that Shrek is not terribly taller than her, putting Shrek at least under 7 feet tall. Shrek is the same height as most NBA players and is even dwarfed by some very tall humans in the real world. It's quite the contrast from the depictions we've drawn of him in our minds. However, this is based on conjecture and extrapolating from Prince Charming's height. This alone isn't enough to say if Shrek isn't an ogre in the traditional sense. For a moment, let's examine Princess Fiona's reaction to discovering that Shrek is an ogre. For one, she only realizes he's an ogre when he removes his helmet. The green skin was obscured by the plates and the dirt, but it's the ears that reveal that he's an ogre. Shrek's height doesn't give it away to Fiona. Shrek was already passing as just a very large human the entire time. So we can see in the first film that Shrek's size is suspicious for an ogre. We have more clues from Shrek 4 where we see other ogres that absolutely tower over Shrek. These creatures are likely the vision of an ogre that haunts the people of far, far away. It's with these facts in mind that I think it's fair to say that Shrek is either a dwarf by ogre standards or some other species of ogre, like a black bear to a grizzly bear.
He's really tiny, isn't he?
I didn't know we could do that.
It makes sense when considering the context of Shrek in the first film versus the last film. He was a loner who just wanted to be alone on the swamp. He never felt any kinship with the other fairy tale creatures, nor they with him. He was angry and alone. He went from that to a family man who had everything he secretly had wanted back then, to the point where he missed what he had before he found Fiona. Shrek was so bitter and angry because he didn't really fit in anywhere. Too big and imposing to live among non-ogres, and too small to live among the ogres. This is not due to Shrek's stature as just being short, because we've seen his height as a human. As a human, we can see that he is the same height as Prince Charming. We can see that he had his own following without even being famous like Prince Charming, so it wasn't as though Shrek was short and unattractive. The bitterness that Shrek felt was due to the isolation he felt in not having any of his own kin anywhere, until he found Fiona, that is. Shrek's relative diminutive size further enforces a core theme of parody that's sprinkled throughout the entire franchise. I mentioned earlier how Prince Charming is a parody of the daring knight and prince hero, think Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty. Princess Fiona is a sort of soft parody of the princess archetype, who are typically in need of rescuing, even though she herself does require rescuing a few times throughout the series. Lord Farquaad himself is also a parody of the tall and noble wise king. His castle of Duloc is a parody of something like Disneyland. Look at the asphalt ground surrounding the complex of his castle and how out of place it is with the surrounding aesthetics. There are mascots and musical booths inside. It's a cold, corporatized entity that's destroying fairy tales.
I'm not the monster here, you are! You and the rest of that fairy tale trash poisoning my perfect world.
The fairy godmother is a parody of the fairy godmother from Cinderella, where she's actually a villain who has corporatized fairy tales to the point where she's turned happily ever afters into a thriving business, holding happy endings ransom to people who are desperate, like a mob boss of some sort. King Harold is a parody of the frog who turned into a prince, where he discovers his real happy ending requires him to go back to being a frog. And Shrek himself is not immune to this. Shrek isn't just a parody of the regular hero archetype by being an ogre. He's also a parody of an ogre by being so small in comparison to regular ogres.